Alrighty, we are live out of my girlfriend's apartment, and we are going to now. It's not an apartment; it's a house, and it's a room in the house. And we are going to now today talk about loops. We've got for loops, we got while loops. The main one we're going to focus on today is for loops, and we're really going to just quick video about the syntax and why. I'm not going to go too deep on it. We'll go a little bit deeper on this stuff later on. In fact, I'm going to show, maybe I will show a while loop. That's probably what we're going to do. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Desktop on, bada boom, bada bing. Y'all can see all my personal messages, me convincing my friend to learn how to record, which is fantastic. Close that. Oh, hey, look at that. It's just all music stuff today. Look at that. All right, let's get rid of that. Shitty Ochre. I don't know what that was, but hey, it was a song. Get rid of this, get rid of that, get rid of that, and let's go ahead and just pull up our terminal. So we're gonna open up in code. I have a little special command I made that allows me to open up a file in code just real quick. So we're gonna call it, let's call it for loops.js. Oh, I shouldn't have called it .js. Whatever. It's still going to be a directory name because of the thing I made. Anyways, I should have just called it for loops. I'm a little tired. I had my COVID vaccine today, second one. So hopefully I don't die mid-video. We'll find out. All right. So what? This is going to take a minute. Oh, there we go. It loaded. So we're just going to go ahead and make an index.js, and let's start talking about for loops. What is it? Why is it? So in recent classes, we talked about complex data types. We had arrays, which look like this. Let's just do a quick review of that. Const, we'll call it my array. And maybe this will have a few different terms in it. Maybe we'll have one, which will actually be the 0th index. And then we'll have a 2, which will be the first index technically. And you get the idea. You can have a list of items. So let's actually just have a bunch of 1, 2, maybe we'll do another 1 in there. Oh, I have caps lock on. I was like, what's going on? Do that. When I give this a save, it should flatten out. Nice, cool. Point is, we just made an array. This array contains different pieces of data. Now, let's say we want to process through this data. Let's talk about what a computer might have to do. And there's fancier ways of doing this, but we're going to start learning the manual way. What a computer has, let's say I want to filter out all of the ones from this array. So I just want to have an array maybe that looks like 222, but I don't actually know what's inside of it. I just want to filter out all of the twos. So let's think about for a second what a computer might have to do. It's probably going to have to, at some level, right? All this stuff is ones and zeros. It's complex data structures. So at some level, something inside of your computer is doing shit manually. We're going to talk about, we're going to kind of dive into that just a little bit today. Um, so, um, wow, that is loud. Holy schnitzel. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's think about what it would take to filter this. Maybe what we would do is we would loop through this entire thing. We'd start off on the first one saying, oh, okay, is this thing a 2? No. Okay, maybe I'll have another array. So this is exactly what I would do. I would probably maybe get another array. And if something is a 1 or a 2, I will dump it into this another array. So maybe I'll loop through the first term. First term is a 1. That's not a 2. Okay, don't put it in here. The second one is a 2. Okay, dump it in here. Bam. Cool. The third one is a 2. Great. Now we have another 2. Fourth one is a 2. So we're going to add that. And then the last one is a 1. So we're not going to add it because we only want to add 2s. Well, this whole process that we just did is called an algorithm, where we iterate through each term of an array and check something and then do something with it. So this concept of what is an algorithm? It's cool, it's fancy sounding, it makes you sound smart if you use the word algorithm. But all it really means is it's the steps that you take to dump or to accomplish something with code. So, in other words, you might think, okay, grab all the twos from this array. That is, on the surface, it technically is an algorithm, but then you ask yourself, how do I do that? And you actually have to come up with a more complex algorithm that defines how do I actually grab the stuff out of this array, right? And that's where we say, okay, I want to do this thing called iterate over the array, meaning we're going to hit each term in the array and we are going to do something with it. In this case, the thing that we do with it is we dump it into another array. Now, this obviously is not going to, this is just hard-coded values, right? I just created one value and then I created another. What we want to do is find a way to actually loop through my array and dump those values in as we go through. And the thing that we're going to learn to do this, first thing, is going to be a for loop. So here's the way a for loop works. A for loop works where we have the syntax looks something like this. There's a few different ways to write for loops. So if you see some, you're going to get an idea, how to do that later on. Inside of these parentheses here, what we're going to write is we're going to do a variable name. We're going to say let, I don't know, I'm going to call it index is what I'm going to call mine. Then we do a semicolon. I promise you this has fucked me up 1,000 times. I've written a comma instead of a semicolon. It is a semicolon for loops. Okay? So I'm going to say let index, and then now the next thing that we're going to define is we're going to define the conditions in which this for loop will keep running. Okay? So in this case, I want to say where the index is basically less than the length of this array. So that way it just keeps going until it loops through the entire array. So what I'm going to say is index is less than my array dot length. Bam. And then the last term is what we want to do each step of the way with this counting term. We would call this our iterable, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word. But anyways, don't quote me on that. Anyways, this term, what we want to do is we want to increment it each step. So I'm going to type in I plus plus. And let's talk about the way that this works. Okay? So now, the way that this works is actually fairly simple. What it does is all this code, everything I guess inside of this curly brace, we would call, I guess you could call it the code block. So we'll call it the block of code or whatever you want to call it. Okay. I'll end it. So I will say end block code. Cool. So now, basically, what we want to do is we want to think about, let's say we have an index defined, right? Oh, we actually need to set a value for this index. So if you actually try to just run it like this, you're going to run into an error. We need to say let index equals 0 or some value, right? So now what we do is this index starts at 0. Okay, so it starts at 0. It's going to run through this line of code. Now, since this code doesn't do anything, it's just going to equal 0. At the end of this block, it's going to say, let me check my condition now. Is my index less than my array length? And since it's 0 right now, the answer to that is no, it is not. So, I mean, yes, it is. This whole thing right here evaluates to true. So since it evaluates to true, that means that this is going to be incremented by 1. So now we take this 0, we turn it into a 1. It's going to run through again. It's going to ask itself at the end, okay, is 1, less than my array.length? That's true. So then it equals 2, so on, so forth until lo and behold, this starts at 0. This is index 0. This is index 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So now once we get to 5, if the length of the array is 5 and our index is 5, 5 is not less than 5. So at that point, Doomy, come here. At that point, what happens is it literally escapes the for loop. The for loop stops. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. I am just going to run this as it is right now. And we are going to console.log our index. And guess what? I am fairly certain. Actually, I don't know. This might actually be scoped to here. I think if I change that to a var, we'll find out. I'm going to run node index.js. And hey, look, it says index. Oh, because I did an I here. Let's see. Oops. Let's see. I have a hunch this might actually throw an error still. Yep, it says index is not defined. And that's because we used a let instead of a var. I think var will not be undefined. Let's see. Yep. Yeah. So don't worry about that. That's more complicated than you need to know for right now. But just know that at the end of all of this, right, that index kept incrementing and incrementing and incrementing. And at the end of it, when we console log it, it just equals the length because it basically kept going until this condition was no longer true. Now, how is that useful, right? Even though it's not shown here, right, because it executed on our computer, even though it doesn't show and reflect itself in the code necessarily, that meant that when this thing ran, it ran first at a 0, then a 1, then a 2, then a 3, then a 4, then a 5. And we can make good use of that. It actually only went up to 4. Well, it did. It went all the way up to 5, but it doesn't loop through again after 5. This stuff seems hard. The way that you're going to learn this is by practicing it, not by me telling you, not just for the record. But anyways, what we're going to do now is we're going to try and filter out all of these ones. So here's like a pretty simple algorithm here. What we're going to do now is we are going to basically say, all right, this is where we use an if statement. So I need to check to see if the term equals 1, right? We'll make a new array too. Because remember, basically what we wanted to do was we wanted to run through this array, and if it equals a 2, we want to dump it into the next one. So what I might do is first actually define a variable in here. I might say const current term, and we're just going to index out my array at the index that we're on in our for loop. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to console log it. Let's see what this does. Console.log current term. And yes, I did change my var back to a let. In general, the only var is useful for showing stuff. Like for example, it was useful for me showing you what that value was, but it's usually better to use a let, which is scoped differently. Don't worry about what that means now. That's another day's topic. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and console.log current term here. Okay, oh, that was big. Console.log current term. Bam, give this a save, run it. Bam. So as we can see, what it did was it looped through and first we started with index my array at 0, index my array at 1, index my array at 2. And that is how we were able to get all of these terms. What we have to do to choose whether or not we want to dump it into that new array is we have to use an if statement. So what I might do here is something along these lines. This is roughly what an if statement looks like. We put a condition in here. In this case, we just want to check to see if the current term is equal to 2. Whoops. 2. And then if it is equal to 2, then we want to dump it into that new array. So the way that we would do that is we would just do new array dot push. It adds it to the end of that array dot push, and we are going to do current term. Give that a save, and let's see if our code works. We're gonna run bam, and oh, we never console.logged it, so we have to console.log our new array. Give this a save, bam, bam, bam. Hey, we got only 2, so that was exactly what we wanted to do. Now, there's another fancy way we could do this by using a thing called a while loop. Now, a while loop has a little bit different structure. It's actually a little simpler in some ways. So this algorithm you're going to notice is going to look really similar. By the way, what I did to comment out all of this, that's the word that we would use. What I did to comment out all of this was I highlighted it and then I hit command and /. That's a VS Code shortcut and it works pretty good. Okay, so anyways, moving on. What we're going to do is we're going to do a while loop. And you know what? This time we're going to make it look a little bit different. And I think in some ways this is a little similar. You do have to know both though. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do a very similar thing. I'm going to set an index equal to 0, except for this time, instead of putting it in here, we're just going to put it outside of it. We're just going to say let index equal 0. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say while, and this actually kind of sounds like a lot more like English when you're writing it, if that makes sense. I'm going to say while this index is less than that array's length, which is myArray.length, myArray.length. And you know what? For now, we're just going to leave that. And let's talk about what happens. So again, this is your code block. So let's go ahead and copy this over. Yank, bam, bam, bam. Well, I'll just type it in. So again, this is your start code block. And here is your end code block. Cool. And what happens in here is we have an index. This index has a value. Even though this index is defined outside, we're going to change it. We're going to increment it. So I have let index equal 0. And then basically what this does is it just keeps looping. It goes down, down. Oh, okay, restart, down, down. Oh, okay, restart, down, down, restart. But each time it restarts itself, it checks this condition. And it only continues if this condition is true. So I want you to pause for a second after I ask this question. My question to you is, if I were to run this right now, what would happen? Pause. All right, we're going to keep going. So basically what's going to happen is this while loop is meant to stop under a certain condition, but since this index is never changing, guess what? This thing is just going to get stuck. So if I run node index.js, hey, look, see how that's stuck right there? That's because it's constantly looping and this condition is always true. So it's just going to keep looping. It's not going to stop. It's going to keep going and going and going and going and going. It's magical. Welcome to computer worlds. Now, fortunately, there's a little command to escape a JavaScript runtime, and that command is control. Even on Mac, it's control. It's not command. Control C, bam, we're out of it. So yes, we wrote some bad code that got stuck. So that means to exit out of that, we did have to go to our terminal and type in Control C. Now, let's again, how about in this one now, we're going to add this index plus plus. So I'm going to add a plus plus there, and now I'm going to run this, and now it's going to execute pretty quickly. And it did. So why did that work so fast? Well, basically what we said here was we have this value called index, which is 0. So we start our while loop, we start our code block, we say index, well, first it actually checks this. It says, is the index less than my array.length? In this case, it is, because 0 is less than 5, right? Cool. Then what it says here is, okay, increment index. Let's move it up by 1. So now we're taking index, we're making its value 1. and it did the same thing. It went 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then when it got to 4, it incremented it one last time. It got to the bottom of this loop. It checked it again, and since its length was longer, it did not run through this. Okay. Again, if we were to console.log index, and here let will work. Don't worry too much about why. If we console.log index here, guess what? It is also going to be 5 again. Because basically it ran through the whole array, kept incrementing itself, and at the end, when it finally broke this condition, it wasn't useful anymore. So we exited the while loop. We can also exit a while loop early by using the break term. And break works for while loops and for loops. So watch this. I could say if index, maybe if the index equals 3, then we're just going to type in break. Whoops, let's go here. Give that a save. It's literally, I just write break and it should go. And also this should really say end because that looks sned. What the hell is that? All right. So now watch this. Basically, this loop exited at the index equals 3. Notice that there? Cool. That's really all I got for you for loops and while loops. Let's go ahead and finish out this though. Let's finish out this while loop, and we're gonna dunk this stuff into that new array again. And guess what? All this code is pretty much the same, right? Because we have the index defined the same. So we're just gonna put that in there. Holy shit, I pasted that wrong. There we go. Give this a save. We probably gotta uncomment out those. Right, and you know what? We are going to now console.log our, I don't remember what that array is called, but I'm going to use auto completion to help me out. What do I call it? New array or something like that? New array. There it is. Hey, cool. So we're going to console.log our new array. Sweet. So I'm going to type in, I'm going to press up on the D-pad, the fucking game controller or something. Oh, why is this stuck? Take 10 seconds, pause the video, see if you can spot the error on why this is stuck. Also, I have to escape it by hitting Control-C and giving you the answer in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so the reason why this is stuck is because we never incremented the index. So I do have to add that index plus plus. So what happened is index was 0 the whole time. It wasn't doing anything. All right, so we're going to run this again. Bam, and hey, look, it worked. So the code was almost exactly the same. The only difference is basically the structure, right? We define index here. We put the index plus plus here. We put the condition here. But it's almost like it's a different syntax to accomplish the same thing. So awesome. That was loops. Hopefully I can get a little functions lesson in before class starts today.